Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're cutting through the noise on the latest earnings call from Eton Pharmaceuticals, or Eton for their third quarter of 2025.
Yeah, this one is. It's a really complex story. You've got this rapid transformation happening, huge acquisitions like Increlex being integrated.
And a pipeline that's, incredibly active.
Exactly. And if you just read the headlines, you are going to miss the entire strategic picture. You have to look at the short-term integration noise versus the long-term catalysts they're building.
Right, because the headline numbers, they look messy in places.
They do, but management spent a lot of time on the call explaining why that mess is temporary and what the true underlying business looks like.
And that starts with the top line, which suggests the growth engine is absolutely working.
Oh, for sure.
Product revenue for Q3, it hit $22.5 million. That's a huge number for them.
It's triple-digit growth year over year, 129%.
And 19% up from just last quarter. I think this is their 19th straight quarter of sequential growth.
That kind of trend is exactly what you want to see. And they're not just booking revenue. They're turning it into cash. They generated $12 million of cash from operations.
Okay, but the adjusted EBITDA was only $2.9 million. That seems low.
It does, and that's the messy part. Management was very clear on this. That number was weighed down by significant non-recurring transition costs.
From the Increlex integration?
Yes, specifically from the shift in ex-U.S. distribution.
Let's just clarify that term for a second. Ex-U.S., that's just industry speak for outside the U.S., right?
That's right. It's a one-time acquisition cost, basically.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting here is that even with all that going on, they actually managed to cut their adjusted SG&A expense from Q2.
So their day-to-day running costs went down even while revenue was exploding?
Exactly. That's some serious operational control, and it's why they're so confident about significant margin expansion coming down the pike.
Okay, let's unpack that margin because this is probably the most critical part of the call. The reported adjusted gross margin was 45%.
Which is, frankly, alarming. It's way down from 64% last year.
So why bury what seems like a great quarter under a number like that? Is there a risk that the market just sees these transition costs as a recurring thing?
That's a fair question. They stuck to GAAP for the press release, but on the call, they tackled it head on. They said that 45% was skewed by two major items hitting their cost of goods sold.
Okay, so what were they?
First, there was $7.4 million in costs, all tied to that Increlex ex-U.S. distribution transition we mentioned. Think inventory write-offs, contract termination fees.
A necessary evil of integration, basically.
A one-time hit. Then second, they had a $2.4 million loading order of semi-finished Increlex inventory.
And why was that?
It was required to kick off a new long-term supply agreement with a partner. That deal should bring in, $2 to $3 million a year in revenue going forward, though it might be a bit lumpy.
So you're talking about almost $10 million in one-time charges sitting right in their cost of goods.
Pretty much.
So if you back all of that out, all the Increlex ex-U.S. activity, what was the real margin for the core U.S. business?
If you normalize for that, the pro forma adjusted gross margin was just over 70%.
Wow. Okay, that's a night and day difference.
It is.
Yeah.
And it shows the fundamental business models is already there.
Yeah.
It's already a high margin platform.
Which makes their guidance a lot more believable. They're targeting about 70% for Q4.
And their long-term goal is aggressive. They want to get over 75% by 2028.
How do they get that final 5% bump?
It's all about product mix. As they launch new things and drive adoption of higher margin products like Alkindi, Khindivi, and Increlex, that average margin just naturally ticks up. And with $37 million in cash, they can afford to weather this noise.
All right, let's get into those products, starting with Increlex. It's the cornerstone of the acquisition, the biggest revenue driver.
And it's tracking well ahead of what they originally projected. But yeah, the patient numbers on the call caused a little confusion.
Because they were flat, right? Net active patients stayed right around 100.
Which for a growth product is usually a bad sign. But the detail here is crucial. They inherited a big group of older pediatric patients in the acquisition.
And those patients are now aging out.
Exactly. The drug is for pediatric growth failure. Once a kid reaches their adult height, around age 18, they stop treatment. So it's not discontinuations, it's planned graduation, you could say.
So the strategy has to shift. It's not about keeping patients longer, it's about finding them younger.
Precisely. Increase the duration of treatment. But the real game changer here is this label harmonization initiative.
This is the big catalyst everyone's watching. Explain what that means.
So right now, the U.S. definition of severe primary IGF-1 deficiency is much stricter than the EU's definition. Eton wants to get the U.S. to adopt the EU standard.
What's the argument for that?
15 years of European registry data that shows Increlex is safe and effective for patients who are, less severely affected. We're talking about patients with IGF-1 levels between -2 and -3 standard deviations.
So this would open the door to a much larger patient population.
Much larger. If they get the green light for their proposed clinical study, and they expect feedback from the FDA by the end of December, this could potentially increase their total market opportunity fivefold.
Fivefold. That is a massive binary event coming in just a few weeks.
It's huge.
Okay, let's not forget the adrenal insufficiency franchise, Alkindi and Khindivi. Alkindi seems to be just a solid, reliable grower.
Yeah, Alkindi Sprinkle is on pace for its best year ever, and they said this partly because they split their sales force into two dedicated teams. One is now 100% focused on pediatric endocrinology.
A smart move. But Khindivi, the liquid version, has hit a bit of a snag.
A regulatory speed bump, yeah.
Yeah.
The FDA restricted its use to patients 5 and over. Safety concerns about 3 of the inactive ingredients, the excipients. This is a huge problem because the biggest unmet need is in kids under 5.
So they've basically been locked out of their primary market.
For now. But they've already developed a revised formula with much lower excipient levels. And the FDA has apparently indicated they'd be receptive to a new submission.
So there's a clear path forward.
A very clear timeline. Bioequivalency study starts January 2026. They submit the supplement in Q2, and they could see an approval in Q1 of 2027. That would unlock the whole franchise.
Okay, let's shift to Galzin for Wilson disease. This one is really outperforming.
It's a great story. It's already blown past its year-end 2025 patient target. There are over 200 active patients now.
And management's take is that this is just a classic relaunch.
It is. The product suffered for years from low awareness because of shortages and, frankly, no promotion from the last owner. Eton sees that as a positive. It means there's a ton of low-hanging fruit.
And they're capturing it by fixing the access problem.
Exactly. They put comprehensive patient support services in place, which dramatically lowered out-of-pocket costs and just made it easier for people to get the drug.
But the drug itself is still a challenge for patients to take.
A huge challenge. That's where the next-gen product, ET-600, comes in. Galzin is a 3 times a day dose, and you have to fast. Compliance is a major issue.
And ET-700 is an extended release version.
Yep, designed to fix that exact problem. They have a proof of concept study starting in Q1 2026 with results expected mid-year. If that looks good, they'll start a pivotal study right after.
It's a clear pattern. Identify the friction point and then dedicate R&D to removing it.
That's the playbook.
So looking ahead, the next big thing on the calendar is ET-600.
That's right. The NDA was accepted. This is the first oral liquid desmopressin for central diabetes insipidus. The PDUFA date, so the FDA's deadline, is February 25th.
And they're getting ready for launch.
They're so confident they're actually producing inventory at risk right now. They expect to launch right after approval using that same pediatric endocrinology sales force.
So 2026 is shaping up to be a huge year. Let's just quickly recap the key milestones.
Okay, first, you're looking for continued revenue growth and that margin expansion towards 70%. Second, the ET-600 launch.
Right.
Third, submitting that revised Khindivi formulation for the under 5 group. Fourth, getting results from the ET-700 pilot study for Galzin. And fifth, starting that massive Increlex label harmonization study.
And on top of all that, they're still shopping.
They are.
Oh.
They said they're in late-stage talks with 2 different parties for more ultra-rare disease products. They want to close a deal by year-end or soon after.
Which could mean 2 more product launches next year.
That's what they said.
But with the $10 million in transition noise from Increlex, is there an execution risk here? Are investors worried that every deal comes with this much baggage?
That is absolutely the question mark. Management is signaling confidence, but the market's going to be watching the cost of the next integration very, very closely.
So that's the tightrope they're walking, aggressively investing in R&D and M&A while also tightening the operational belt.
That's the entire story. They're proving they can scale revenue and control fixed costs at the same time, all while trying to remove these barriers to adoption for their key products.
The whole strategy is about reducing friction for doctors and patients.
Precisely. They believe the path to 75% plus margins is just paved by making their drugs easier to prescribe and easier for patients to take. Okay, and that brings us to our segment, This is Not Financial Advice. This is where we pitch an outrageous but plausible trade idea, purely for discussion.
And I think we have to talk about that Increlex binary event.
It has to be. The entire trade centers on that regulatory catalyst. Management expects FDA feedback on their harmonization study proposal by the end of December.
The one that could increase the market 5 times over.
Yes. So the time frame is incredibly short. The trade would be a highly leveraged short-term call option. You're betting on favorable FDA feedback hitting before the New Year's holiday.
So you're basically betting on management's read of the regulatory tea leaves.
You are. It's a gamble based entirely on their stated confidence and the belief that 15 years of European data will be enough to convince the FDA to let them run the study.
High risk, time sensitive, but the potential payoff is enormous. Outrageous, but definitely plausible.
That's the idea, a pure binary event bet.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. We've covered the jump from a messy 45% reported margin to a core 70%, and the huge list of milestones coming for Increlex, Khindivi, ET-700, and ET-600.
And I'll leave you with one final thought. Think about the long-term impact of that Increlex strategy. If they really are successful in shifting diagnosis earlier, getting kids on therapy younger, how much does that change the lifetime revenue for a product where patients only stop treatment at age 18?
The duration of therapy just keeps extending.
Exactly. Even with flat patient counts, the revenue per patient could grow exponentially over time.
A fascinating angle to watch as they head into 2026. Remember, none of this is investment advice. We hope this gives you a clearer picture of this very complex story.